Okay, guys.
Even the most explosive of fantasies must follow rules. Rules keep stories consistent and easy to follow. Rings of Power is full of holes and lacks justifications and reasons. Do you get it? J.R.R. Tolkien. I chose that lazy pun to chain my arguments, unlike the showrunners of a series full of gaps.
Go.
Readers and viewers can sense these gaps adding up until breaking immersion and enjoyment. These cracks come as events happening for no apparent reason other than just because the writers wanted them to happen. The last time I talked about Rings of Power, I said it was a goodbye video. I guess that
I lied.
because I want to answer this comment. 3/4 of your arguments go out of the window. You're making it about race and gender. So I'm reviewing Rings of Power without mentioning gender or race, or without mentioning Tolkien's lore. In return, I'm making it all about the writing, because in its core, it doesn't make a lick of sense. It may try to look and sound epic and poetic because the creators can get out of their own, but it comes out pretentious and incomplete. The showrunners should have covered the basics before trying to do something artsy. The story is not consistent within itself or as a fantasy. In a single sentence, causes and consequences don't add up. So things happen just because. Let me explain it with a 101 writing class. Coherence is the logical bridge between events, plot points, and scenes. Starting point would be a cause, which is the initial event. A character crosses a bridge because he wants something or because an incident happened. That means taking action or action taking place. On the other side of the bridge, there's a consequence, which is the endpoint event that simultaneously works as a cause for another event. Let's say characters could cross the bridge running, walking, jumping, and in many other ways. The method he chooses to traverse the path would respond to their personality and the circumstances he's facing. The method they use to cross the bridge may affect the result and have unforeseen consequences. Pulling a story that makes sense requires respecting these basic elements: motivation, action, incidents, causes, and consequences. Rings of Power has little respect for the 101 lessons. Let's see it with an example of the explosion of Mount Doom. Adar is the Orc father, and he wants to darken the sky to free the orcs of the sun's daily tyranny. His army retrieves the key and uses it to trigger the volcano's explosion. However, Adar orders the operation while he and all of the orcs, as far as we know, are right next to the fiery mountain. The volcano erupts with fire, thunder, ash, and rocks. The main character feels no fear and survives. Every major character, every orc, and Adar survive as well. So the writers put the characters into an impossible dire situation just because they want something exciting. But then they can't figure out a logical or even entertaining way to make characters go past these obstacles. As a result, they either skip the explanation or make up off-screen resolutions. Picks a raft with the exact information she needs, and here's a boat to save them. Here's the Queen of Numenor, riding with an army of inexperienced volunteers to fight an enemy they have never seen. At least they are very considered, and they enter the town through the bridge. Here's Adar letting Arondir go with his weapons to deliver a message, just because the writers couldn't figure out another way for the character to live. Here's King Durin. He wakes up the Balrog by throwing a leaf while he was trying to save his people from impending doom. Poetry, right?
Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
Rather than sensical causes and consequences, most small and big things happen just because. The lack of connection between events makes it confusing and full of additional related problems. Namely, a fantasy still needs coherence.
Guide my horse.
It is true that we need a certain level of suspension of disbelief to consume a fantasy, but that suspension may only go as far as the writing allows it. A fantasy is a literary genre defined by the imagination of its creator. It introduces an original world where science, logic, societies, and laws are bound by the writer's will. Because it has no basis in science, fact, or theories, it often includes supernatural elements such as magic, mythical creatures, and divine beings. But unless said or shown otherwise, everything would work as it is in the real world. Rules, beings, and events that are unique to the fantasy world should be clear to the reader or viewer. These are the special features that would break the laws of our known reality. The existence of dragons in Middle-earth doesn't justify fast travel, HP regeneration, or martial arts elves. unless said otherwise. Fantasy would be starting a volcano with magic like this, rather than using complex science and a convoluted plan. Fantasy would be using this as a magical sword hilt of legends, rather than a simple key. But what a mess they've created by misunderstanding the genre. Villagers traveling back and forth the village off-screen and somehow at the middle of the night. Arondir making a tower collapse with a kick. Fight scenes that involve martial arts and not weapons. Numenor riding in full force from wherever they landed and right into the tiny village they needed to save. Halbrand appearing out of nowhere in front of Adar. Not even the size of the conflict is clear. We don't even know how many orcs there are, or where and how they are living. There's even a lesser understanding of how many humans there are, and what is this Southland Kingdom we keep hearing about. But of course, the least logical part is the volcano explosion. The writers took the characters face to face against impossible odds, and then they solved these impossible odds with a time jump. Fantasy doesn't mean the writers can make up things as they go, but because they do, we're just expecting the writers to enforce resolutions just because they want certain things to happen. The show doesn't even respect what they say and what they establish, because when the characters tell us something,
I'm just a Harfoot.
they show us otherwise.
You're going the wrong way!
For example, we've seen Galadriel is a good warrior through CGI, stunt doubles and bad action scenes, but we're only told that she's a commander, as there's never any army and never any leadership traits. And we've heard
Key to the eyes of the elves.
but we've seen the elves missing to find these massive trenches from a tower. Either way, when the Rings of Power shows us something, they tell us otherwise. How is she afraid of two orcs who can't even understand their senses?
Shut it. What do you smell?
So characters evolve from vengeful, smug commanders to wise and merciful leaders in seconds. Or entire clans change their personalities in a couple of scenes.
Take their wheels and leave them.
Mr. Hobbit, where is your injury? Your clan was going to feed you to the wolves. Now you're fine.
Stay true to each other.
What the fuck is you talking about? What the fuck was that?
We're going to be left behind.
Other times, the show forgets to tell and to show. Camps and even cities can appear out of nowhere.
An old Numenorian colony. Pelage, they called it.
Weren't you an isolationist nation?
They took our job!
Whatever, call the Megaphone. By the way, this is a magical sword that you activate with your blood. It corrupts, it frightens the enemy, and it's just a key. I've seen worse examples. Some scenes can't even sustain themselves. Let's see here. The queen doesn't want them there. And they don't want to be there, so why didn't Angelica from the Rugrats go away? Sometimes they show something, but it doesn't mean anything. Like this landscape where everything is burning and dying, but it doesn't present the same danger for the main characters. And finally, sometimes they tell us everything and things happen too fast. I want to build a forge. The forge is ready. I have a husband. Get me through, or all of the 5 elves of the show will die. And let's take the throne from your father. The show has pacing issues and it's all over the place. Contradictions are only a natural conclusion of a story that doesn't connect its scenes properly. And do you want to know why this happens?
The heroism of your kind.
There are, but we call them artificers. And most wounds to our bodies heal of their own accord, so it is their labor instead to render hidden truths as works of beauty.
This wound needs elvish medicine.
It's because the show is full of filler and it doesn't make sense. There are 3 types of filler consuming runtime that could be better spent into connecting one scene to the next. First is slow dialogue and long establishing shots. Here's an example. When Galadriel and Halbrand reach Numenor, we have about 1 minute of scenery and music until...
What is this place?
There is only one place it can be. Land of the Star. The westernmost of all mortal realms. The island kingdom of Numenor.
Instead, we could have about 10 seconds of scenery until...
What is this place?
The westernmost of all mortal realms. The island kingdom of Numenor.
I made the scene much shorter, whilst adding world-building shots during dull dialogue. You might think this is an isolated issue, but it's widespread. Rings of Power needs less dialogue, shorter transitions, shorter scenes, and faster editing. There is a second type of filler, which is more offensive. That is making characters wander, more specifically, going to a place and then coming back without learning or achieving anything, or without changing emotionally or physically. Galadriel is a bad commander and loses her army. Galadriel is a bad commander and loses her army. Aronder is defending the town of the woman he loves. Aronder is defending the town of the woman he loves. There's a third type of filler that is much easier to notice. Many scenes have no point, and entire episodes go by without much new happening. Spent several episodes debating whether or not to mind Mithril. The characters spent several episodes deciding if the stranger is good or bad. And why do you keep interfering with the stranger's magic? Don't you people learn anything? Meanwhile, the rest of the elves, Celebrimbor and Gil-galad, have done nothing. So the bulk of the show is filler. All of this time wasted should have been invested into connecting events in a logical manner. For example, rather than having a full episode of Numenor debating whether or not going to Middle-earth, and whatever this was, we could have seen Numenor landing in Middle-earth, scouting the area, finding the enemy, making a battle plan, and setting up this camp that just suddenly appeared. All of this led to an unavoidable, fast-paced finale. The episode started with Halbrand, half-dead, riding off-screen for 6 days without rest. Then he heals immediately and no one suspects anything. It was the same as before. Things happen just because. There is no rhyme, no reason, and no conflict. There is only a rush to the end because everything else was filler. All of this conflict, the rings, and the decay of the elves has no meaning. First of all, it should have started on episode 1, not at the last hour. Secondly, who cares about 3 things that are smaller than a crown but also circular? The elves can go to heaven whenever they want, so why stay on Middle-earth? They are dying, so they should have a compelling reason to stay in the mortal realm. I won't imagine one for the writers. I also won't make up excuses for the main villain that wears a black cloak. Halbrand is Sauron, and it's a surprise to no one but the characters. And we know this because the show abandoned sense in favor of delivering a mystery.
Mystery box!
See, Halbrand required a whole season of coincidences to get to Eregion and forge something he had never mentioned before. He had no agency other than following Galadriel. He was always reluctant and very clearly not a king.
I found this on a dead man.
Oh, mystery box!
What does this even mean?
Are you the king we were promised?
He's the prince that was promised.
And what does he even want?
Together, we can save this Middle-earth.
I will help save the world first, then take over the world.
We know not his purpose, motivations, or origins, but we learned something. If Mithril doesn't combine with other metals, or if it explodes when you use force, you can use other metals and use less force. More importantly, if you spent several episodes trying to mine Mithril, but you've got one, well, it was all filler because you only need one. And lastly, maybe Sauron just wanted some sexy times.
People are gonna fall in love with him and be like, I can change him.
And maybe Galadriel wanted the same because she didn't even say anything after she learned the truth. The other plots are just there. Miriel and Elendil had a conversation about faith, which I liked, but then they arrived at a Numenor that changed off-screen, because this led nowhere. And finally, these no-name wizards fight against the stranger because they want to restore his Sauron memories. But here's the twist.
I'm good.
Riveting dialogue as he launches a beam of magic that turns the bad girls into moth or something. He also remembered how to use his magic, who he is, how to talk, and how to feature a personality. And this guy dies, who cares? Not even the stranger, as he won't heal him, as he did to an entire forest and his arm. I'm tired. 1 out of 10. I tried to display the exact reason why this show is not good, without using arguments others could easily dismiss. Writing mistakes and shortcuts do translate into cracks. The cracks are so wide that I can see right through into the writer's office. The show may try to look and sound epic, but without purpose, it's just pretentious. And for a show called The Rings of Power, there is very little information about the rings. What can they do? And what is this power of the unseen? What do you think? Leave your comments down below and keep the section
Civilized.
If you like my content, you can subscribe, like the videos, share the video, and visit my supporters page.
Slovo Bulgeable. Bees. We all loved him, but he wasn't Aegis.